So Clark, I think we would all agree that Clark was not a flashy guy. We'd see him cruising around the neighborhood on his one wheel and flip-flops, even when the temperatures were dropping into the 40s. But if he's not flashy, then someone please explain to me his neon blue, gold leaf plated, tiger emblazoned tracksuit. Similarly, Clark had no problem being quiet. He could easily sit back, taking mental notes of the absurdities of the world. Watching it go by could make him perfectly content. But he was just as comfortable, maybe even more so, when he was the life of the party, regaling the masses with the funniest, most entertaining stories we've ever heard. And this dichotomy says so much about him. And I believe it was because he knew himself so well, was always so comfortable in his own skin. He never tried to fit in, never forced his presence on any situation, and at times, even appearing to be a wallflower. But I know that can't be the case, since wallflowers are not at the nexus of a global community so large that it just boggles the mind. So how can this be? I've had some time over the last week to ponder this, and I've come to the realization that his story is a lot like another famous Clark K. You know, that mild-mannered guy with powers so super that he must keep them hidden from everyday society in order to fit in with us mere mortals. Kind of like when our Clark would try to fool with his light-hearted demeanor and friendly smile, doing the show in the hopes that maybe we wouldn't focus on the fact that he is that guy. You know, the one that did a first ever descent over a 50-foot waterfall in a whitewater kayak into crocodile-infested waters. That's the magnitude of what we're all dealing with. And the more I think of it, maybe that tracksuit was his cape in spandex. And instead of wearing an S on his chest, he simply wore his heart on his sleeve. But many times I'd hear, he's a really lucky guy when referring to Clark. I have to admit, I've been guilty of saying that myself. And sure, he was lucky, but only in the way that any other virtuoso is lucky. Born with the necessary set of genes, a strong predilection, and importantly, being given the loving parental support to bring out his fullest potential. But after the early years, luck was no longer involved. And it is from that point that Clark went on to create one of the most extraordinary lives I've ever been witness to, becoming a legend. And what got him there was his singular ability to first envision the life he wanted, combined with having the courage to relentlessly row against all of life's currents to attain it. A few examples. His work. To say that Clark's career was unconventional would be an understatement worthy of Clark's understatedness. And it is the envy of everyone, regardless of whether you, we, or I understand it. I believe what made Clark so successful was his ability to connect with people, understand what they needed, and then help them shape their world and fulfill their lives. He was the master curator of human experiences, starting with his own life and then expanding outward to everyone he came into contact with. His children. Talking about Blake and Carter was when Clark's face would light up and he would truly glow. He would tell stories about Blake's perceptiveness, how no small detail could get by him. The family would be trekking in the Andes, and Clark would think he was the only one who saw it. Off in the distance, the donkey was pulling a goat riding a llama. Then shortly thereafter, Blake would simply say, "Well, that was weird." And both would giggle, reinforcing the bond they forged through small observations of the world's absurdities. Similarly, telling stories of Carter's exploits would make Clark beam with delight. Whether on the water kiting or mountain biking, Clark was living vicariously through Carter. And Clark certainly knew he'd never do a backflip on a mountain bike, at least not publicly to blow his cover. But I'm sure he lived the experience as if he had. But above all of this, what I believe he was the most proud of was how the world that he had provided to them, one filled with the highest of adventures, had created two of the kindest, gentlest souls imaginable. But that's not a big surprise, given who their parents are. Which brings us to Jackie. In a life that was filled with incredible chance encounters, there is one that stands out far, far above the rest. High in the Andes, in Cusco to be exact. Clark was greeting his next group of adventure seekers one by one as they stepped off the tour bus. The last one was a wide-eyed lass from Scotland. He gave her a kiss on the spot. And then I can imagine him saying something that I've heard him say numerous times. Hola, soy Clark. Sí, Clark, como Superman. Ah, sí. It was the perfect romantic start to what would become the adventure of a lifetime. Years later, just before Clark was going to introduce our family to Jackie, he built her up to the point where I thought I was going to meet a true rock star. And incredibly, even that turned out to be an understatement. So ironically, we are the lucky ones, lucky to have had the chance encounter with Clark that ended up enriching our lives in so many ways. For our family, he orchestrated us moving to this neighborhood, for which we'll be forever grateful. And it brought with it numerous perks. Hey Clark, do you have any eggs? Sure. Hey Clark, do you have some milk? Sure. Hey Clark, I know it's 9 p.m., but we're at the airport and our flight leaves in an hour and a half. We left Tyler's passport on the scanner at the office. Any chance you can grab it and meet me at the Golden Gate Bridge in 20 minutes? No ask that was made of him was ever too big. So without hesitation, he agreed. We met in the parking lot with military precision. Now as I've been thinking back, I remember him rolling the window down ever so slightly and then handing me the passport. So I'm wondering now, maybe this task had been large enough to require him to wear the tiger suit. Alas, we'll never know. And even greater than Clark's kindness is the fact that his entire life was a living lesson. One showing us that we all have the power to shape the world around us and make even our wildest dreams become reality. We just need the vision to see it, the courage to buck the long-established trends, and importantly, the fortitude to see it through. For this lesson, I am sure we are all eternally grateful. And lastly, to Blake, Carter, and Jackie, Clark was such an incredible force, incredible husband and father, that there's no way that even all of us here, a community so large, can fill the enormous hole that has been left behind. But that doesn't mean that each and every one of us are not going to try. And I'm sure that I can say this for the entire community. We are all here for you, for whatever you need, whenever you need it, for eternity. Goodbye, Clark.
This morning, Clark's words came to me in this poem from a dear friend. It is his message to me, and I would like to share it with you. Bring light, show love, live true. A golden sphere, a million beams I stretch to feel its touch. Within my soul, within my heart, shining through my eyes and mouth. I made my promise on that day to the sun and all its rays that I would live a golden life and share its shining ways. Living this way brought me to you. Amidst the golden haze from the ever-shining sun, our sons came forth. A brilliance, a bedazzling, a gift, a wish, such trust. I looked at life, our lives, never lived by me alone, for we walked inside a sunshine beam and together called it home. I made just one more promise from me to each of you. I promise you my forever, in light, in love, in truth. Us earthly things we cannot stay, but the sun, the joyous sun is heaven sent, a sunbeam, a golden kiss, my forever in your hands. Bring light, show love, live true.
He wrote this poem when he was 7. It's called The Exotic Jungle by Clark Petula. I want to be a great explorer of jungles. It would be nice to discover great ruins and see many exotic animals. The feeling of being alone, just with the animals, streams and vines, and being warm all the time.
This spot might look and feel like a small, humble, pretty muddy beach on the shores of an otherwise world-class wind and water playground with a ton of more famous options. But for Clark, this place was incredibly special. It was about teaching, about community, about his stoke and others, and warm-ish water. It was here that he would give his passion to the next generation. Supervising Carter's progression from 10-year-old learning Grom, struggling to stay upwind underneath his dad's cloud kite, to the strong, capable, and inspiring kiter we see today. Carter's potential on the water and in life as the young man he has become is a direct reflection of the steady guidance, strong example, and understated pride radiating from Clark as he watched over those early sessions, standing literally right where I'm standing today. Teaching a son of my own and standing by nearly white-knuckled in the early days, I would always marvel at the way that Clark would take off on a water adventure. By the way, he called them missions. Way upwind, past the islands, on his foil that sort of always seemed to sing the perfect G sharp as he rocketed merrily along, trusting Carter to be okay on his own. But that was his way. He did trust Carter. He had taught him the right way, the safe way, and was willing to step back and let him figure it out. And when I talk to Blake about what Brickyards means to him, he sighs and says, well, we watched a lot of kiting there. Blake, I'm heartbroken that he didn't have the same time with you, but know that all of us are here for the same. It touched my heart deeply on Monday when I got to take Carter back out to the water, and he said, with Finn in the garage, we'll teach you, buddy. This was also his home, his literal backyard. Many are more qualified to talk about the importance of Glenwood to Clark and his family, but I do know his days were filled with the pride and belonging of a strong community that supported and treasured who he was. To be able to be in the water, to teach his son to be there with others, to foster the stoke so close to the community he held dear was huge. It might be odd that we're celebrating such a global force as Clark with a ceremony only 4,000 feet from his home, but maybe that was fitting. He was in the water all over the world. La Ventana, Hawaii, Bonaire, South Padre, Hood River, many that I haven't named. But this humble little kite spot was so close to home was his. It didn't take any advance notice or special communications. When the wind was right, I knew he'd be here. Sometimes meeting Carter's bus that dropped off just over there. He wasn't always in the water, but he was here, confidently overseeing the session playing out in front of him, crafting the next video, Instagram story, or post you've all seen and enjoyed from miles away. And it was here that I first met Clark, just over there. We met in May 2020 at the absolute height of the pandemic, and maybe we were starved for human contact, or maybe we saw in each other a similar life ethos and search for adventure. But I do know that within weeks of casually hanging out pre and post sessions, I had, on a whim, invited him to our place in Hood River for the start of remote school. Jackie and Sarah were thrilled. Neither had met each other. But we spent 2 weeks, peak pandemic, living 24/7 together, biking, kiting, hiking, and one-wheeling ourselves to exhaustion. Those nights in that home, tired from the full day's activities, were some of my favorite of the last several years. Just listening and marveling over the story of Clark. His impact on my life has been profound. He was my friend, Sarah's, Finn's, and Will's. I truly mean that. They each thought of them as his or their friend. I deeply admired how well he knew himself and how he didn't waste energy on the small stuff. Clark had a quiet, well-deserved, and humble self-confidence and a special talent to optimize life, his and everybody else's. I'm heartbroken about the future hours together that have been stolen from us, but thrilled that I've had the opportunity to call Clark my friend. Before I surrender the mic, I'd like to share a Jack London quote I think appropriate. I would rather be ashes than dust. I would rather that my spark should burn out in a brilliant blaze than it should be stifled by dry rot. I would rather be a superb meteor, every atom of me in magnificent glow, than a sleepy and permanent planet. The function of man is to live, not to exist. I shall not waste my days trying to prolong them. I shall use my time. I believe that salt water is a cure to many ills in life, whether it's tears, sweat, or the sea, or the bay. Salt water can center us and help us move through the hard times to a better, brighter future. Clark, I'm gonna miss you, buddy. But this place, and its muddy salt water, for me, will always be you, our superb meteor. Thank you.
So with Clark, we could be doing this on top of a mountain. We could be doing it on a river. We could be doing it in a desert, a jungle, even in the sky. But we brought together a number of Clark's Water Tribe today, all of you here. The water has created so many powerful bonds in our lives. The ocean, the waves, the wind. Clark was a surfer, a kiteboarder, a wing foiler, a kayaker, a river guide. He was a waterman to his core. Many of the people here share that bond. The water allows us to share a moment of grief, a moment of celebration, of life, and the return of a life to the ocean. Whether it be surfing or any number of other adventurous qualities Clark embodied, it's more than just a sport. It's a way of life. It embraces the ebbs and the flows of existence. The Paddle Out ceremony celebrates this philosophy, offering a way to navigate the tides of life and death with grace, grit, and bravery, together as a tribe. It's a ritual that reaffirms our connection to the earth, the water, and each other. A circle that remains unbroken once formed. In a few minutes, we'll gather the flowers and paddle out to the boat. When we reach the boat, we'll form a circle with nobody left on the outside. We'll all hold hands as this circle represents the continuity of life and our unbreakable bond. While we're in the circle, we'll have a minute of silence, holding each other's hands and reflecting on Clark and the bond we shared with him. I'll break the silence by yelling out a word that comes to mind when I reflect on Clark. And then we'll give it a couple seconds and we'll all yell it out at the top of our lungs. Anyone who wants to can then also yell out a word, and our group, our circle, will repeat that word as loud as we can. And we can continue at random. Just feel compelled to yell something out and we'll all repeat it. You can start thinking about your word now, or as you paddle out. Or you can just yell out what comes to mind in the moment. If someone says your word before you, don't worry. If you repeat it, it just adds more emphasis and more significance to that word. There's no judgment in the circle. There's only love. Once we've gone around the circle, it's an open expression time. We'll throw our flowers to the water, we'll scream, there'll be lots of crying. We'll splash the water and let our primal beings be ourselves freely. We'll break our circle naturally, and it can be extremely emotional, so embrace it. In the paddle out, we find a profound expression of love, loss, and the never-ending cycle of life. As we paddle out, let's hold in our hearts the memories of all those who have paddled into the sunset before us, leaving us with the memories as enduring as the ocean itself. And we are going to scream our hearts out and celebrate our friend Clark. So thank you again, everybody, and let's go get wet.